Okay, welcome to a preceptor training program for paramedic preceptors here at Southeastern Community College, wherever you're watching from. Welcome to this presentation. Shouldn't take very long. We will go over a few things on how to be a preceptor, how to evaluate paramedic students. This training is mandated by our accrediting body. So our paramedics cannot attend clinics at your organization without this training. So again, this is only for Southeastern Community College. This training program does not fulfill the requirements for other colleges training programs. So if you're asked to be a preceptor for that program, you may have to complete a different preceptor training program. Okay. So first of all, this training, really the intent is only for paramedics. We are accredited by COA in our paramedic education. There's no mandated education for EMT preceptors. So if you have your EMT partner precept an EMT student, that's perfectly fine. In addition, we recognize that the training for EMTs is a little bit different. So some of the things I'm going to talk about in the context of taking calls and running calls really doesn't apply so much to EMTs as it does to paramedics. So this really references paramedics. In addition, all of the approval content, the site for our college does not exist for EMTs. It's all done on paper. So you have that as well. So this is our goal for how we educate, or for our education program. This is the COA required goal. So certainly welcome to pause and read that if you would like. So I want to talk just a little bit about the stages of the paramedic course. And the first stage is what we call didactic. It is the lecture component. So we always start with that. We try and have them gain a basic didactic or cognitive knowledge of the skills. And then they practice those skills in the lab on what we call task trainers. So they're mannequins, and the only thing that those mannequins do is allow them to practice that skill, gives them very minimal competency in that skill. Then we move on to simulations and scenarios where they begin to understand where it is that they would use those skills. So they may learn how to start an IV in the classroom, move on to practice in the lab, and then they will apply those skills in a scenario to actually begin to understand when to start IVs. And then they move that skill on the clinics. So this is the first of the very important points of this. So the purpose of clinics is for them to practice skills, really and truly. One of those skills being assessment. So when you have a paramedic student, the purpose of paramedic preceptorship in paramedic field experience is not really practicing skills. It's the application of those skills into a patient plan or into a patient care plan. So clinics is where they actually practice on real patients. Field experience is where they begin to develop patient care plans. So more on that in just right now. The capstone field internship is the end stage of the paramedic program. Anyone who's going to be a preceptor for the capstone field internship has to receive this training. The only thing left for the students while they complete this is final testing. They've done all of the classroom requirements of the course, okay? It allows them to apply all of the knowledge they've gained in the course to patient care in the field. One more time. So the role of the paramedic student in the capstone field internship is to learn how to manage patients in the field by practicing managing patients in the field. So the intent of the capstone field internship is not to watch the paramedic manage calls. The intent is for the paramedic student to manage calls. The evaluator of the capstone field internship the preceptor of the capstone field internship serves as the evaluator for that paramedic student. So the requirements are the student must complete 20 ALS team leads. So what does that mean? Our definition here at the college is that number one, a patient must be transported. So we do not allow any ALS team leads for non-transport patients unless ALS skills are performed. For instance, they gave dextrose to a patient who's hypoglycemic. The paramedic student must perform an ALS level assessment, very similar to what you would do when you assess a patient. So if the student performs an ALS assessment and the patient is transported or ALS skills are done, then that counts as an ALS team lead. There's no requirement for them to start IVs. There's no requirement for them to put a heart monitor or any other skill except the ALS assessment. So they would not obtain a capstone field internship team lead if they let you do the assessment. So when you look over their submission for evaluation, if they put capstone field internship team lead on their documentation, then they're saying that they did the assessment. And if you approve that, then you agree with them for that. So this is sort of the definition from COA, our accrediting body, on what it is that is a capstone team lead, a field team lead. Okay, meaning that minimal to no prompting was needed by you. I want to introduce this right now. First of all, we don't want any detrimental patient care. So if the paramedic student truly gets stuck and the patient needs life-saving care, then I would certainly hope that you would bail them out. If the patient is very stable and they get stuck, simply let them struggle. Let them fight, let them struggle, let them figure it out on their own. Again, if the patient is stable, does not need life-saving care or potential life-saving care, just let them struggle. But again, if the patient does need life-saving care, then of course you would help them. So this is sort of the National Registry's visual depiction of what I just sort of described for you. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to move. You should be able to see this. I'm going to move to an evaluation tool. Now, all of you should have an account with platinumed.com. For those of you at Burlington, it should be your email, your fire department email, your city email. For those of you at Lee County, it's your individual email for the most part. I will send a list to Dennis of your email that I have on file, but if you have trouble logging in, please let me know and I'll get you logged in. So I'm going to log in. Yours is going to look a little different because you don't have the different things that I have, but I'm going to log in as a preceptor. And when I log in as a preceptor, this says I have one student opportunity to review right here. Now up here is the Platinum Education training video. Now certainly you can watch that as well, and it will go through the steps of how to do this. Now you're going to see, I got a blast from the past. This is Krista McGinn and her documentation. She hasn't been a paramedic student since 2020, but I just found one that she canceled and I was able to complete. So I'm going to complete the review. So as I go through this, this is her information, overview of the information. So this is where we were at. This is the dates and times. Please confirm that the dates and times are correct. Okay. And then here are the patients that we saw. I require the students to document all patients, even ones that were not transported. And these are the skills that she has listed for this patient. Okay. Now, I did not go through these forms, but I will show you these forms here in just a little bit. Okay. All right. now, as a matter of fact. So these are the forms that you need to fill out for the student. So we fill out form, and simply, Krista's a fine student, so we're going to give her all 5. She can make comments on any of these. It is certainly likely that a student will not get all 5s on their evaluations. That's perfectly fine. If they get 1s, please, I would like some comments for that, okay? So there's the first form, and this is the second form. Now, this one is your evaluation of her care of this patient. The first one was sort of her overall performance, okay? So I'm going to say, did a very good job on here. And then these checks, you can say, I would like the student's teacher to contact me, and then accept and save. Okay, then you would do that for every one of the patients. Okay, then we're going to go to complete. You can sign this if you would like to. Okay, but then you also have the chance to reject it or to return it to the student. Okay, if you return it to the student, I encourage you to make some comment here, because otherwise they won't know why you returned it. Reject. Now, the main reason that I get students who reject, or the preceptors who reject this, is they reject it because they worked 4 hours of a shift with a student, and then another preceptor worked another 4 hours. Well, one of the downfalls of this system is they can only choose 1 preceptor. So it just has to work that way. Somebody has to. So we're going to approve documentation. And now we have no more preceptor opportunities that need to be completed, right? So that is how you complete the preceptor documentation. It's very simple once you're able to get logged in to the system, right? So now I'm going to go back to here and talk about the role of the preceptor. Remember, while you have input into approval of the student as a paramedic student, you do not make the final decision about whether a student is ready to test for the National Registry. Competence of the student is not measured by any number of hours or patient contacts or anything like that. Is determined solely by the fact that they are competent to serve as an entry-level practitioner. So when you do the evaluation, don't let personal issues cloud what it is that you think of the student. Think of, would you be willing to work with that student? Would you be willing to let that student work as on a member of your family? So personality conflicts are problematic. As a matter of fact, the other side goes too. Maybe you really like someone, but they're not competent to work as a paramedic yet. If so, make sure you document that on your evaluation of the student. You also serve as a role model for the students. How well you perform under stress, how well you provide patient care. I've got one more point that I forgot to mention before. Your paramedic students will not have a good background knowledge or a good knowledge of your protocols. So as an example, a patient falls and breaks their hip, is otherwise stable. The paramedic student assesses the patient, develops a management plan, says we're going to start an IV and we're going to give you something for the pain. The paramedic student would have no idea of your protocols as far as pain. It would be certainly acceptable for you to ask them, what would you like to give to this patient for their pain? And the paramedic student may say, well, I'd like to give them 2 milligrams of morphine, which is a perfectly appropriate answer, but quite likely not one that you use on your service. So you may say, our protocols say to give 50 micrograms of fentanyl instead. So they would do that, right? So you will need to help them on your protocols. Don't ask them to memorize every set of protocols that they may work under as a student. Also an educator, okay? It is fine for you to educate them in the ways of a paramedic. In other words, the things that paramedics do. That's sort of a big part of the student experience is to find out how paramedics actually do things. I would ask you not to teach them shortcuts that may not be in the curriculum. Things that you do that, oh, this is what we actually do. The reason for that is they still have to pass the National Registry exam. The National Registry exam does not test shortcuts. The National Registry exam tests approved clinical practices. So we don't want to confuse them. That's what I'm after here. And then finally, an evaluator, right? The student will be able to see your evaluation if you choose to make it so. So there shouldn't be any secrets in this. Talk to the student afterward. Students have spent the last 10 months being evaluated, 11 months being evaluated by me and other people. So they're used to being evaluated. So tell them how it is they did. After the call, have a discussion with the student about how the call went, right? Don't step in if the student starts to struggle unless the patient needs you to step in and the student is struggling. Allow the student to delegate tasks. A big part of being a paramedic is team dynamics and working within a team system. So if it is a cardiac arrest and the student assigns you to the airway, you can evaluate and do the airway at the same time. That's perfectly fine. That's the way this is supposed to work. Help them, or try and help them after the call, not so much during the call, if you can get away with it. Now, this form is the evaluation tool that you will fill out in paper, okay? So at the end of the clinical experience, the field experience, the student will work with one single preceptor. Now, we got away from this during COVID because it wasn't working, but I'd like to go back to it. Works with one preceptor, and that preceptor will fill this form out. Now, again, you are not approving the student to test. There's more to the approval of the student than just this form, okay? But obviously it's dated 2020-21, but we didn't use it for that year. So I would ask that you fill this form out and get it back to me, and this will be part of the review process, part of their portfolio to graduate the program, okay? Do not try really hard not to ignore the students. Also try not to browbeat them. I know everyone has bad days, but remember, every one of you were once a student as well, okay? So understand that they were students, okay? And that you were once students as well, and that they're students. So intervene when patient care is threatened. This paramedic student is absolutely stymied. Jump in and take it, and then talk about it after the call, what happened. If at any time you think a paramedic student needs remediation, guidance, more training, anything like that, please don't be afraid to contact me. I am in the office all summer. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation, so you'll be able to see it. Matter of fact, right now, this is my office number. It's a rare kind of thing that you'll get me on the office number. That's my cell phone. And you can email me pretty much any time of the day, and I will get it and answer you pretty quick. Or you can certainly use my my cell phone. Text me, call me, whatever. So when should you contact me? If you ask a paramedic student to leave a clinical site for any reason, some of them are listed here, absolutely send me a text, give me a call, something like that. Especially if it's something like the paramedic student's under the influence of something, repeated unsafe acts that I need to know about, insubordination, they don't follow instructions, anything like that, please I need to know about that sooner rather than later. And anytime you think there's something that I should know. So basically, I think if you need me to respond immediately, a text is better. If not immediately, then an email is fine. Please include as much detail as you can in that email, right? A couple of other things about students. If they're in your station or in your house for the first time, please give them a tour, show them around. Remember that students are afraid of making, especially the first couple of times they come, they're afraid of doing something to offend or doing something wrong. So sometimes they don't do anything. Show them where they can put their food. Show them where the bathrooms are. Show them this is where you can stay. This is where I prefer you don't stay. Just make sure that they know the rules so that they can feel comfortable during the shifts. It's not fair to them to say, well, they used our XYZ in the refrigerator, mustard in the refrigerator, and they didn't ask. Well, if they didn't know that they weren't supposed to do that, that's just an example, then that's not a fair statement. So give them a tour and find out where it is, what it is that they can do. So that's the end of our training. Please feel free to give me a call, send me a text if you have any issues. And once you get to the end of this email, this presentation, please send me an email at jstephan@scciowa.edu that you've completed this. Again, to wherever it's at on here, on my email. I'll get it here in a second. Contact information, this email right here. All right. Thanks and have a great day. Thanks for helping SCC students.